name's Trevor Smith. This is Full Burn, the podcast where we kick tires, light some fires, and interview awesome founders in the space and defense industry. Today I've got Jeff Thornburg of Portal Space Systems with me. Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Portal?
Sure. I'm Jeff Thornburg, the CEO and co-founder of Portal Space Systems. We're a 3-year-old startup that's developing a highly maneuverable and very capable multi-mission payload spacecraft for our defense and commercial customers. It utilizes advanced propulsion system with a very efficient bus structure and a very flexible power payload deck. We're excited to bring that to the customer community in 2026.
So a little bit about your background, Jeff, because I hear you had some time at SpaceX.
Yeah, my background now is about almost 30 years now in the space industry. Started out in the Air Force as an active duty officer, spent 7 years active duty. Got to work on aircraft and KC-135s for the first couple of years, and then Air Force sent me to graduate school for aerospace engineering. Then I spent about 5 years at the Air Force Research Lab, where I got to work on new rocket engine technology for the Air Force and NASA, and spent about 5 years at Aerojet doing similar things on the private sector side. Went over to NASA in Huntsville, Alabama, and worked on the Ares rocket program. And then in 2011 is when Elon called me and asked me to come check out SpaceX. And
what was it? Sorry,
that's
double
okay.
Tap that or double click, whatever. Was that a phone call from Elon, or what was that like?
Well, I guess there was 2 phone calls that night. The first phone call was from his assistant asking if I was around and available, and I was giving my young daughter a bath at the time. So I said, yeah, give me about an hour and I'd be happy to take the call. And so that was kind of interesting, but then he himself called me back about an hour later and we chatted. And then a few days later, I was at SpaceX for the first time in Hawthorne. And then that kind of kick-started 5 years at SpaceX. My first job and job I held while the whole time I was there was developing the Raptor engine system. And then I got to lead propulsion R&D and then eventually take over for propulsion in the 5 years I was there. So I got to work on all of the fun stuff that everybody sees today and kind of takes for granted, I think, now. The reusable Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, Crew Dragon propulsion, Raptor, obviously. Nothing's more satisfying than watching 33 Raptor engines on the first stage of Starship take off.
I have to ask, when Elon called you, was it a block number or did you immediately save his personal cell?
I do think the number was probably mass, but I don't really remember. I think there was I don't think it was masked, honestly. I think I just saw the area code and thought, oh, this must be the call I need to pick up.
Yeah, that's cool. So I asked about this yesterday. We were talking, how can founders minimize dilution in the early days? And you guys chose to do something pretty unique, which was, you're well known in the industry, but your Portal Space Systems home website was kind of a stealth blank slate for how long?
Probably close to 2 years, I expect.
How does a guy like you, who just helped build SpaceX, stay in stealth mode for that long? I mean, surely your phone was ringing off the hook.
Well, I had some time after SpaceX that, I took a little break. I did work for Paul Allen the last 2 years he was alive, and then also worked for Amazon on Kuiper for a little while during the pandemic. But I think it was very intentional in that we had a strategy from day one to focus on the customer need. And I think a lot of companies that start up, they just go right into fundraising and then try to figure out what the product market fit is. And you hire a lot of people, you burn a lot of money, you waste a lot of time and resources trying to figure that out. So I think the reason why we were quote unquote dark and in stealth as long as we were is we were spending that time really working with first commercial companies and then DoD agencies to understand their problem so that we really were solving a need that they cared about, because we wanted to hit the ground running and make sure we'd make the requirements in from day one instead of spending a ton of money and time to find that out. And frankly, I don't take hiring staff lightly. And as you start to build up your company and hire people, things get pretty serious pretty fast, because those folks are counting on you to do a good job. And I think you want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, and not kind of play around in that first phase. So it's really not a secret formula, because it's kind of business 101, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. And I think space is a very tough business, because Department of Defense has been the main customer since the 1950s, but it still is the main customer. So,
well, I think I know, actually, because I will hear your story and say, okay, Jeff, you went 2 years without any fundraising. Did you guys just work for free and live in a van down by the river, or how did that work? I mean, you come from SpaceX, so I'm sure you had some runway yourself, but like, not everybody has that opportunity. So was that the case where all the founders just said, we're going to bite the bullet ourselves and get there? Or what did that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's exactly what it looked like. So, I called up a couple of friends of mine, Ian Thornburg and Prashant Ravindran, and we talked about the concept and what we were going to do as a business. And fortunately, the three of us were in places where we had other work that we could do to pay the bills, so to speak. And we basically worked for Portal for free for the first couple of years, just to make sure we had the right positioning to move forward. And I think that's how a lot of businesses start, right? I mean, not necessarily just in space, but across multiple industries. Sometimes the founders have to kind of grind it out and see what's really there before you put that burden of resource onto the business. Now, we were in a good spot where we had some angel investor interest from day one that we used to start the company, but because we weren't sucking away salary and a lot of resources, myself and Ian Vorbach could really focus on those customer engagements for the first couple of years, and almost have infinite runway in that time frame to do that, and then lock it in as we started to get the traction with the customer.
There's a lot of traffic, but that's what happens when you're in a moving podcast. So you had to have a level of conviction that is like just concrete to make that jump and say, we're gonna do this for 2 years on our own. So I assume the team was locked in.
Well, first I felt very strongly about the problem statement, right? Which is we significantly lack mobility and maneuverability on orbit. And that was a thesis that I had that was the reason why I wanted to start Portal Space Systems to begin with. And I didn't see anybody really building against that problem in the way that I wanted to, because we've got an industry where typically companies are really good at developing a spacecraft, or they're really good at making, say, a propulsion system or whatever. So when you're making and designing a spacecraft for a new application, you're kind of limited by what you can buy if you're not also an expert in that. So if I give you an example, you're not really going to change the maneuverability significantly of U.S. spacecraft if you keep buying the same types of propulsion over and over and over again, because the physics of operating in space is the same. That's not changing. So I wanted to tackle that problem by taking a novel propulsion concept that has some history to it, but really modernizing it and then rebuilding the spacecraft from the ground up around it, and then providing a flexible payload deck where we could accommodate a whole variety of different customers.
I was listening to your presentation yesterday, and you had a great comment. You say, hey, we're working on the 6th gen fighter, but where are we today with satellites from a gen perspective?
Yeah, it may not be completely fair, but I think it is accurate, is that I think the U.S. specifically is still kind of on first gen fighter analogy for spacecraft. The design of spacecraft really haven't changed a whole lot. And our adversaries, have kind of taken note of that fact. So when I think the person that's familiar with maybe how we've developed fighters for the Air Force, we're on like 6th generation fighter jets with all of their technology and applications. You see, the F-22 and the amazing things it can do, and now, that's what we're trying to bring to the spacecraft industry is a next generation fighter for equivalent of what we want to do in orbit.
What were the events leading up to the moment that you and Ann said, hey, we're going to do this? Like, what was that? All right, we need to incorporate, this is going to be a company. What did that look like?
Well, I think there was different flavors of that, because I don't feel personally like it was one moment. I think there were gates along the way,
yeah.
Right? So we were convicted enough where we incorporated the company immediately in the fall of 21. We had angel investor conviction behind us to really get the company going. Within a matter of months, we had built a first prototype of some of the systems we were conceptualizing for Supernova, and we were kind of off and running as a very lean, two-person team, so to speak, at the time. But then I think when we started to see both commercial interest and capabilities, and then when the DoD, we went through all the same things that founders in the space industry are doing now, going through the Space Systems Command front door and working with those folks, but then finding the work and the grind is being just tenacious about finding those people that care about what you're doing if you want to work with the Department of Defense. And then when we started to see interest enough where we were now bringing in contracts with the government, and that level of interest and support, that's kind of was the first wave. And then I'd say, more recently, as we brought online our first facility, our hardware is under construction for our subsystems. I mean, that's the second wave of this is really happening. And the more the design matures and you start to hone in on, what the first spacecraft really looks like, what the demo mission is going to do, how you're going to operate and control that system on orbit, and you're starting to get all those pieces put together.
Going back to year zero, what's a mistake or something that you see happen early on that you could give some advice to founders listening to this podcast? So year zero founders.
Stay true to your convictions in that first year and really the years that follow. I think it's hard, and you're going to hear people say that. I mean, being a founder and entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart. But I think one of the mistakes I see most often is everybody has an opinion on what you're doing. And there'll be plenty of people to tell you you're doing something wrong, or the business is on the wrong path, or you should do this instead of that. Or the approach you're taking is not the right approach. And I think the thing that for us is that there were times where we might have wondered if we should change certain approaches or philosophies, but we stayed true to really what I was talking about earlier, which is focus on the customer and what they need. And I think you're never going to go wrong doing that. But if you really feel strongly and it's working for you, or you believe and understand how that can work for you in the future, if you're the type of the person that is going to have some doubt when you hear counter opinions or the naysayers, you're going to have to flex a new muscle and really put that to the side and stay true to why you did this to begin with. Because if you don't follow through in those early years in the way you want to, you may end up with a business that you really didn't want to start. And I think I see that happen sometimes, and there's just too much effort required to do this, to find yourself in a place you didn't ever want to be. And so don't let people tell you something that you're not a believer or convicted on. On the flip side of that is the other problem.
We see this at CDL all the time.
Yes. So the flip side of that problem is have some advisors and folks that you trust around you that are going to speak truth to the problem, so that you can make the right choices at the right time. And you may need to make some adjustments and be open to that coaching and advice from your circle around you, especially for CEOs, I think, or the C-suite founding team. Is you need to have people you can trust, and that you can listen to. Sometimes you get so close to your business and your problems that you don't always see things objectively, and you really need to have a small circle of trust, so to speak, that can tell you how it is and provide some support along the way.
So we met at Creative Destruction Lab, CDL as we call it, in the space stream. I was a venturer who went through the program. Fortunately, had you as one of our mentors. You don't get paid for this, and you have to fly around the world on your own dime. Why is this program so important to you?
Well, when I left SpaceX, there was one thing I definitely wanted to carry as a thread in my post-SpaceX career, and that's I wanted to support the space ecosystem for the quote-unquote new space community. I wasn't sure what that would look like, but initially when I left SpaceX, I took a break and started to do a little consulting for different companies, and that was kind of in that vein of wanting to help support the broader growing new space ecosystem. So when I had an opportunity to be invited by Chris Hadfield back into CDL as a mentor, that really scratched that itch of being able to help founders and founding teams maybe avoid mistakes that I've made or that I've done in different organizations that I've been a part of. Technically how you're approaching difficult problems, and nobody's perfect, right? I've learned plenty of lessons both technically and managerially, and on the people equation side of things specifically, you keep growing. So I think anytime I can help folks in the space industry learn from things I've seen or done well or not done so well, and so that's why we fly around the world and jump on all-day Zoom calls to help founders figure those things out
in all the time zones.
In all of the
time zones.
Yes, they do an amazing job.
Do you have a current company excluded? Do you have a favorite CDL graduate or graduates that you want to give a plug to, and why were they some of your favorites?
My favorite companies tend to be the ones where they come through the program and they're still trying to find their way. And sometimes maybe it's not broadly understood why what that company does is important. Or, it's seeing the value prop in general. And sometimes, a few of us will find something there that we want to help with, so that venture can grow. And I think my favorite companies are the one where people are like, I don't really understand what these folks are doing. And you see something there, you help them push through the issue they're having, and then when you see the broader mentor community at CDL kind of rally around a venture that's gone through that and be successful, I find those to be pretty exciting. The ones that are pretty successful fall in all sorts of different categories. So I also find the ventures that are there to really learn and excel in the experience, I find super enjoyable to work with, because I think a lot of small businesses starting up, they're looking at what boxes do I need to check to try to get a contract or some investment, and so they're looking to pad the resume of their company, and that's not what CDL is about. CDL is about knowledge transfer and learning, and time as a currency. And I think as an added response to your question, I'd say the thing I value, one of the things I value the most is everybody's got their currency of time. So everybody's got their bag of time, the ventures, the mentors, and I think in life that's also the most valuable currency we have, and I think that's why I align with that program so much.
All right, let's jump into maybe some quirky questions. Can you tell us about a time where you might have needed to be in a unique environment or do something a little outside the box to either close a customer or sort of save a program because something went totally sideways and you just had to come up with a creative solution to find it, which, nothing ever blew up at SpaceX, I'm guessing, but, you can pick, you can answer both or just one, up to you.
The one that popped into my head is from earlier in my career, and I was still in the Air Force. I was still an active duty officer, and I was running this rocket engine program. And, the fortunate position, I was in my, early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and I was working with folks across the industry at NASA that had worked a lot of programs and had a lot of depth, and I was just getting going in my career. But to answer your question about recovery, the first time I really had to deal with a serious recovery problem is we had a critical engine component on a test stand at a contractor facility, and it blew up.
As things do sometimes.
As things do. And at the time, and still today to a large extent, government programs are very fearful of failure because typically failure leads to budgets being cut or programs being canceled because government programs are always running on a razor thin line, right? And so I think the reason why this one pops in my head is, I looked around at the contractor team and the NASA team and the Air Force team, and I was I was the program head for all of that, and I just saw the look on everybody's face that this is over. This is done.
Were there any animals harmed during this explosion?
No, fortunately. I mean,
there's lots of squirrels out of Ursa, the little ground squirrels.
Yeah, there's always birds. Always tend to be a casualty of rocket testing, but I think the thing that was really a learning experience for me at that time, which is why it's the one that pops into my head, is I was able to recover the program from that.
Wow.
When we're talking about a multi-million-dollar recovery to a failure, that's no joke, because it looked like it was program ending, and I think the tenacity and the prior work of the team, and I was able to work to completely recover the program on that and maintain, essentially the schedule as well. And that was really a credit to the group and their dedication.
Was this at SpaceX?
No, it wasn't.
It was Aerojet?
It was back during the government days on a government program. That shall remain nameless right now.
I see. You've been secretive this whole time. Got it, yeah. I mean, certain things we just can't say.
Well, and I use that example because failure is so sensitive on the government side, whereas companies like SpaceX and others followed what I think is the right approach, which is fail as fast as possible to learn the things you don't know, bake that back into the design as quickly as you can. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis forever and be afraid to build and break things and recover. So,
well, my assumption was this was at a commercial company because you said, hey, it broke. We quickly acted, we fixed it, and got it on time. That doesn't sound like a government program.
Well, and this was this was probably right at the crossover around early 2000, 2001, 2002 type of time frame. So even the semblance of a commercial space industry like it is today wasn't that way. But for a government-run entity, we did recover more quickly than most, but not necessarily as fast as we could say today in the commercial space. But you can't be afraid to build, break things and recover. And even now, with the founders out there that may be listening to this, in the investor and other customer conversations I have presently, there's just a lot more acceptance of things are going to happen and less work to recover from that. And that's new. I mean, and I think that is a credit to what's going on at Blue Origin and SpaceX and Rocket Lab and other companies that have been successful in carving out some commercial, more fast, rapid commercial mindset with their product to market.
Well, that's the mentality we have to have as a commercial space industry if we're going to move at any sort of speed. Moving on to a little different topic. You like
still a quirky question? Is it still a quirky question?
Sci-fi.
Oh, okay.
We're moving into sci-fi. Do you like sci-fi?
I do.
Okay. So what is a technology you've seen in sci-fi that you would love to see come to fruition? Or multiple?
The obvious answer is warp drive, right?
Warp drive.
I mean,
you're all about speed, so obviously warp drive.
It kind of fits the theme, right?
It does.
But I think
Wait, is that what Portal's doing? Are you guys figuring out warp drive?
Well, maybe that'll be version 10.
Gen 10
of Supernova. But I think in that vein, though, when you ask that question, space is vast. I think some people don't even realize how large the solar system is as a first step versus like the galaxy or the universe. But if we're going to have any meaningful human presence on orbit, we're going to have to be able to move faster and more efficiently, first through the solar system and then wherever it goes. So I think the days of the liquid rocket engine, you know, are at their peak right now.
Yeah.
We're not really going to improve upon what's happening now. We've been at that since, you know, the 1950s, and we're not really going to optimize that more than what we've been able to do, especially at the commercial space companies now. So I think that's why, you know, with Portal, we innovated around propulsion first and built the spacecraft around it because we wanted to move more effectively and provide that sci-fi-like maneuvering on orbit, or between low Earth orbit and the moon as a first step.
Well, if you want to accomplish new things with the same physics, you have to approach the problem differently.
Exactly. The physics doesn't change, like I was saying yesterday. So you've got to rethink how you approach design and what elements you bring to it, still living within the laws of physics. So I think thermal engine concepts and even nuclear thermal propulsion, those are the things in my lifetime that are really going to help advance our mobility around the solar system and even the Earth, Moon, Earth, Mars domain. I won't see warp drive in my lifetime, but
you never know.
I actually, it's a great question you ask, because I went through this thought process in about 2016 after I left SpaceX, because I had one of the national labs asked me if I would come talk about propulsion and the future of propulsion, and so I sat down and kind of had to think about what did I want to talk about and what did I really feel strongly about, and I think that's what's led to where we are with Portal and the Supernova spacecraft. But I think the close second answer to your sci-fi question after faster movement is technologies that support the human presence, because a lot of engineers get all wrapped up around the rocket, the spacecraft, the engines, etc. But there's a lot of key technology to keep humans alive in space. I mean, when you think about the Antarctic Research Station and how hard it is to keep people alive, and they're still on Earth. And now you're going to put people on the moon or Mars or in base stations for long periods of time. The human body wasn't designed for that. And so we have to then augment with technology to support that human presence. So I think that's the second piece. But with the advances in AI and robotics, I think that's going to jumpstart the human presence, you know, beyond Earth, because we're just going to have that help, because they could be built and optimized to work in environments that the human just isn't.
Good answer. All right, we'll find a spot coming up to swap seats here, so you can go back or take us back to SpaceCom, which is the conference we're all attending. So while we find a spot to turn around, I'll ask you any favorite tinfoil hat conspiracies about space. Have we been visited by aliens? Have you met any aliens? And is there anything you want to tell us about the aliens that you have met? Is Elon an alien?
Yeah, those are fascinating.
Take it wherever you want to go.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny, that question comes up with people a lot these days. But and I know Elon gets that question a lot.
Even more so now.
But yeah, I know a lot of people that act like aliens, but
those people are called engineers.
That's true too. Scientists and engineering community. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I was born in Missouri, so the show me state, you know, I want to see it to believe it, typically.
So, do you know much about this car?
I would say no. I know just the surface.
So this is the McLaren 720S. So it's a V8 twin turbo and 720 horsepower, rear wheel drive only. Usually when you see cars like this, it's an all-wheel drive because it's such a challenge to put that much power down with two wheels. So you'll probably experience that if you press the throttle just a little too much, that's where it gets fun. But we'll keep the traction control on.
That sounds good.
All right, Jeff.
All right.
Welcome to Full Burn. You're in the driver's seat, baby.
Now it gets dangerous because I'll probably say things because I'm concentrating on driving. I know that was the whole goal of this. So.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to ask any draining mental questions. I want you focused on, keeping us
That's
in
good.
the car.
We should stick with the quirky questions.
The quirky questions.
Yeah, that's right.
So if space is successful, what scares you?
If space is successful?
Yeah. If all of us combined pull off all the things we're doing, is there anything that scares you about what we're doing?
No, I don't think so. I'm too old to be scared about stuff anymore.
Good answer. Which technology will fundamentally end humanity?
Well, I think AI has a great shot at it.
Oh, good. Which technology will create the next industrial revolution?
Oh, wow.
That might be too much of a thinker. AI again?
Well, that's where my brain went, is AI. But I think it's AI coupled with manufacturing technologies and probably robotics. I think AI robotics is going to be the big changer across all industries.
I would actually toss in quantum computing. Like when you tie both of those together, I think we're going to be in a unique place.
If we really get the error correction for quantum where it needs to be, I would agree with you.
Okay, we already talked about craziest thing you did to close a deal, which was blow up a rocket. You saved it. What space technology do you think will fail? I mean, snake oil. You've seen a few snake oils as a mentor in CDL. We won't name companies, but like in general, what's like the biggest snake oil out there right now?
Oh, man.
Death rays.
Spending a lot of my time in the propulsion realm and spacecraft realm of things, I think anytime anybody says they have a propellantless propulsion system, that's kind of magical, where they're harnessing whatever they think they are to make something out of nothing.
Yeah.
I've seen a few of those propulsion concepts over the years.
Yeah.
They never pan out. They're always snake oil. And I just don't believe in that, because at my core, I'm an engineer, and you never get something for nothing. Everything's a trade, and you have to have energy, convert energy to do something useful. So to say you can make thrust out of thin air, I never buy those concepts.
It's a difficult one to sign off on, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Do you know anyone, or have you had a close encounter with other life in the galaxy?
Wow. I have personally not had a close encounter with something in the galaxy.
Well, we just almost had a close encounter with that SUV.
Well, but I predicted that. So
there we go.
We're all good. No, I mean, my grandfather, I spent a lot of summers with him in the family farm in Missouri, and he would find meteorites and things he thought were meteorites on the farm, and he loved to stargaze at night. And sometimes we saw things that, what were those things? What
facet of human psychology would you remove for human space travel without cryogenics?
Oh, man. That's a great one, right? I'm assuming you're saying that you can't go to sleep for human space travel.
Correct. With that, so you're not going into cryosleep. What sort of mental, issues would you remove? Feel how tight that corner is?
It's pretty nice.
It's pretty nice.
Kind of stretching myself a little bit here.
Yeah.
Boredom.
That's a good. Actually, that's probably the number one. Yeah, you're just bored. Why shouldn't we go into space? Why should we not go to space?
I don't have an answer for that, because I don't believe in that question. Because
I agree with you.
Humanity has had to explore since the dawn of what we are. So I think we've got a lot of issues on Earth. We've got a lot of issues in the United States. We've got a lot of things that we need to reconcile, but we should not stop exploring, because I think we'll find things about ourselves along the way when we make those journeys that actually makes humanity better. And that's what I would tell people that think, well, we shouldn't be spending all this money on space stuff. You'll think that until the asteroid's going to come hit the Earth, and then you'll be happy that we have technology.
We've had a secondary backup.
That we actually might be able to save the planet, or we've got colonies in the solar system. Probably a good call.
Yeah. Okay. why did you want to do this space podcast in this freaking amazing McLaren?
Well, Trevor, you're the first person to say, hey, can I give you a ride in a McLaren and you can drive it as long as your insurance is good.
TBD on that.
TBD. We're still in the middle of it, but I think it's going to be all right. I'm not sliding all over the place here, but yeah. Well, one, it sounded fun, and two, I like the idea to distract your podcast guest with, the fear of doing dumb things. So,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Blank check. What vehicle would you go get for fun?
Oh wow! If we're talking like supercar, this, I've always been a fan of the Ferrari ever since.
Which one?
I don't know. If it's no object, I don't know that I have a favorite. I think any of them would be nice. But I also kind of like the retro older models because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so the Magnum PI, Ferrari, that was always one as a kid. I was a big Matchbox car kid, and so I like the older vintage ones. The new ones are also cool, but there's nostalgia for those older models.
The 360 Modena, the F40, the F50, the Enzo.
I'm not going to turn any of them down.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have not had the privilege of driving a Ferrari, so this is actually the first supercar I've been in. So,
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a bad one to jump in.
No, I think,
So what should the next Full Burn podcast rent?
I wasn't thinking about a particular car for the next time.
Okay.
But I think my advice, like, Jeff, if you could do this again, what would you do?
Yeah.
Pick any car like this and take people out on the track.
Oh, that has been in my head, but I didn't know where a track was, and we couldn't just pick up from the conference. That is on the list. We will do that.
I think that would be amazing, because then, one, I think you could put a professional driver in just for a couple of laps and get some great footage.
I happen to know a few. So if you're willing to fly into Atlanta, we can get on road Atlanta and we can make this happen.
Okay, well, I'm down.
We're going to make this happen.
So let's make this happen.
We're going to make this happen.
That could be a special.
I love it.
Just to take one down the straightaway at full burn, that would be pretty awesome.
Jeff, thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you've had a grin on your face ever since you hopped in the driver's side.
I like doing new stuff.
Good.
The car's not scary. I recommend this McLaren to anybody that's wanting to get into it. So,
well, it's not scary until you really. I don't think we press the gas pedal, but it's very approachable.
Yeah, it's very approachable.
Very approachable.
And my wife likes having me around, so I didn't need to do anything crazy today. So.
Well, we'll go to the track where it's much safer.
That's why I suggest the track.
You're so smart.
I'm not worrying about traffic. I'm just focused on the road.
Ooh. What's the fastest you've gone in a car?
My buddy in high school had an old, I believe it was a 79 Camaro that him and his father rebuilt. And we lived near a reservoir, and we took it across the dam one night at, 115, something like that, to the point where that old Camaro was floating above the ground. Great rebuilt car. It didn't have all the features to, not lift it off the ground at that speed. So it wasn't, I've probably been a little faster in other things, but that was probably the scariest moment I had in a muscle car.
Nice. So. All right.
Thank you,
We're
Trevor.
the red light. Thanks, Jeff.
Privilege.
Yeah, that's Full Burn. Thank you, guys.